Yo, what's up, guys? This topic's here, and yeah, I was at work all day, so I'm a little bit late with these notes. But wow, did we ever get dumped with like a crazy amount of news on midnight? So this video is basically going to be um the top five changes or updates coming in World of Warcraft the midnight that's going to affect M plus gameplay. So, um, of course, there's a lot of news on Wowhead. Feel free to go check it out. One thing I would recommend watching is the 30-minute deep dive with the developers and like the directors and stuff. That's available on the World of Warcraft YouTube page. That gives a very good presentation and promotion of the new expansion. People are actually saying it's probably one of the best promotion or presentations of a new expansion they've ever seen. They did like a narration type uh, presentation with like clear breakpoints talking about all the different sections in Midnight, and the fact that it was narrated and like clearly laid out, people really liked it. So go check that out. But what this video is not going to be is some of the more basic things coming in Midnight. So I'm not going to be covering like the lore, the quests, the campaign, the zones, any type of like world content updates, anything like that. There's so many other content creators that have covered those things. Instead, I wanted to cover the top 5 changes or updates coming that I think will affect Mythic Plus gameplay. Um, so we're going to talk about those. First of all, starting with the combat changes in Midnight. They want to make combat changes more. They want to make it more approachable. So, um, I'm basically going to summarize this. I don't want this video to be too long. I just want to give you guys a brief overview of how they're approaching this. So, combat complexity. So, they're saying that they often hear how there's like a high level of complexity with WoW's class and combat design, and there's like so many abilities to manage, and it could just be nearly impossible to learn a spec if you're a new player without all of these external resources and guides, which I would agree. So this is kind of like a mentality shift that they're going to be taking when designing WoW moving forward. They want to make WoW more approachable, so they're basically going to be updating every class specialization with an eye towards approachability. They want to reduce complexity and make gameplay more intuitive. So this is actually pretty big. It's going to make the game more appealing and accessible to new players. And I actually think, and now I know that a lot of high end players might see this as lowering the ceiling or making the game more boring, but I actually think that they will somewhat enjoy it because part of the fun that comes from an MMO is being able to learn, being able to adjust and adapt and make changes yourself. If all that you're doing is following a guide simulation, following a stat simulation, like it definitely takes some of the fun away. So if they can make the game more simple and less complex to the point where we can go back to the days of like actually learning things yourself and experimenting, that would be super fun. Um, it's always going to be a meta, but the question is like, is the meta just all about simulations or is it about people actually discovering it themselves? So I like these changes that they're taking. And then part of this change in reducing complexity and the way that combat is designed is add-ons. So they're doing a huge add-on change a lot earlier than we thought. We originally thought that the stripping down of these combat add-ons and weak auras and stuff wasn't going to come as soon as midnight. I think most people thought it was going to be more like the Last Titan, maybe at the end of the saga, the World Soul saga, but they're coming straight out and they've said basically that in midnight launch you will see a lot of add-ons stripped away and no longer working. So they're basically saying here we don't want gameplay to rely on add-ons to show the information players need. Going forward, we plan to design the game so that all information required to use abilities is available within the interface. So I'm not going to go through all of this, but they basically talk about what changes they're going to make so that we don't have to rely on that stuff as much, and they're going to make sure that classes don't have as high APM, so like actions per minute, so they're not as spammy. There's definitely going to reduce some buttons. They're going to reduce resource flooding. So like, I know they made a change to like Death Knights, so like especially Blood, like they're not going to be managing runic power, runes, and like bone shield charges to use as a resource on other things. So I think if they strip down, yeah, on like the resource flooding, the amount of buttons, APM, and complexity of the specs, I think that having these combat add-ons may not be quite as necessary. I definitely think it'll still be a tough adjustment to make. And there's a separate post or some part of the patch notes we're not going to go over in this where it goes like into detail exactly everything that's not going to be available. But it's basically going to be things like DBM, daily boss mods, and bigwigs are not going to be available because the main essence of the add-on change they're making is that combat information is no longer accessible. So that means a ton of weak ores are also not going to work. What they're not, and like Omni CD is not going to work, Kick Tracker is not going to work, which is scary. But as we get into some of these other changes, you'll kind of see how they're adjusting for that. I think what they said will still work is like interface and like visual add-ons. Like I think like things like LVUI will actually work. Almost all of LVUI. There's very little of LVUI that's actually based around like combat information. It's mostly just visual UI adjustments. Yeah, so huge mentality shift and change coming early midnight. So that was probably the biggest one. The next one is the healing changes in midnight. So they want to move away from healers just basically rotating cooldowns and always needing a massive healing cooldown for the entire dungeon or the entire encounter. So it basically says that the pace and flow of healing is so severe right now that like it's just way too hard of an entry level again, even for healers. They want to move away from like fast paced rotating cooldowns and just topping your team before the next burst of damage comes out to more of like reacting, like, oh, this person needs healing, let me heal them. Or they're probably gonna do a lot more rot healing too, like so that healing over time makes a big difference more than like bursty spot healing, which I know that most healers are in favor for. I don't think healers prefer this like bursty healing profiles that we see now. They would rather be more reactive and do a lot of throughput. I think it's more enjoyable playstyle and it's less stressful. So they're still gonna have like shorter cooldowns that you can use situationally, but I think they're gonna try moving away from like the giant cooldowns needed for like huge burst damage and having to rotate those and plan to when to use those. And they want your time to react to be greater, right? You want to be able to choose the right spells, the right situations, and not have to like react in the spur of a moment and top your team in 3 seconds before the next, Sacred Toll cast goes out in Priory, for example. So definitely a healing shift from the top end healers that I've seen in content creators so far. They're all pretty happy about this. So this will definitely affect Mythic Plus. And then obviously I couldn't make this video without also showing the season 1 Mythic Plus rotation has been revealed for Midnight. So there's 8 Midnight dungeons, but they're kind of following the same standard they have the past expansion, the 2 expansions, Warcraft and Dragonflight, where you're getting 4 Midnight on release and 4 Legacy, and then I'm assuming season 2 is going to be like another 4, the other 4 Midnight and Legacy, and then season 3 will probably like all of the Midnight ones at once, kind of like they did this expansion. They seem to really like that model. So we have Magister's Terrace, which is a Midnight dungeon, probably based out of like Silvermoon City. And then we have Mysera Caverns, which I think this one is in like that the Haranir zone, the forest like looking zone. Then we have Nexus Point, Zenith, Windrunner Spire. These are both in the Void Storm, I believe. And then here's the 4 Legacy. Algothar Academy, I think most people are happy to see this. I know that like Croth can be a little bit of a menace, and same with the I can't remember the other boss's name, not the tree boss, but there's another boss in there. Those can kind of be menaces, but I think people just love doing massive AoE. And the funny thing is, whenever Algothar is in the dungeon pool, you almost can guarantee that classes that do mass AoE are going to be heavily favored. And so this is going to be a really rough, like, honestly, I think it's going to be a rough, like, Phys Comp season, because almost all the Phys Comp classes are target capped at, like, 5 or 8. And you just cannot clear or kill the first area as fast as you need to, or the ads on the first boss. So, yeah, I don't know about this. This really tells me that it's probably going to be like a mass AoE season or like a caster AoE season. So, we'll keep that in mind moving forward as we talk about the meta looks like moving into Midnight. But we're obviously really far from that, and we'll have to see what they do with class tuning. But it's just, last time Algothar was in the dungeon pool, you know what it was. It was Shadow Priest, Mage, Og. So bunch of classes that have uncapped AoE. Um, at least Fire Mage did at the time. Seed of the Triumvirate from Legion. I've heard a lot of people say good things about this. I didn't play this in Legion, so I can't really speak on it myself, but from what I've heard, the speculation is that this dungeon was only not well received because it was added so late and it was overtuned. But people seem to like the layout, the bosses, and the design, so hopeful for this. Skyreach from Warlords of Draenor. We obviously have not seen this in Mythic Plus Dungeon Pool so far, so this will get some modern touches to it. And then Pit of Sauron from Wrath. This is their first attempt at bringing a Wrath dungeon in Mythic Plus, so this will be fun. Only dungeon we've seen here before is Algathar, so be a real fresh M Plus season to start. Next, this is probably going to fly under the radar. I've seen some people talk about it, but not a whole lot. So this is the line that is important. So creatures will no longer be immune to stun effects after 3 applications of the effect. So right now, if you do like Warrior Shockwave and then like double Shaman with like knock up and cap, that's 3 stuns. They'll be on stun DR after that. So if you try and stun them again after that, nothing will happen. Well, that's not going to be the case anymore. Instead, what they're going to do is they're not immune to stun effect after 3 applications. Instead, the duration of the stun effects will continue to diminish in half upon each application. So what I don't know is I don't know if the duration of the stun diminishes in half after the first stun or after the third. Like, I don't know if you can still do 3 normal stuns with no diminishing returns and then they start diminishing. I would assume that's the case, because otherwise this might actually be even worse, because right now you can get 3 full stuns off before you're immune. I would hope that you can still get 3 full stuns off and then they start diminishing, which means that like that 4th and 5th stun is probably still going to be pretty good. And I think honestly in a lot of these pug keys, all that you really needed was that 4th or 5th stun to potentially save you from a bolt going off. So if this is going to work how I think it will, it's going to be way easier to do stops as pugs. Overlapping is not going to matter as much, and you're not going to really have to worry about them going on stun DR. But ultimately, this is just going to make it easier to CC mobs. And then I'm not going to go through all these class notes here. You see this little scroll thing on the side? This is 100 pages of class notes. I played World of Warcraft back in the day. Classic and Burning Crusade. Then I took a big break, came back in BFA. Since I started in BFA in like 2018 or 2017 or whatever it is, like 8 years ago, I have never ever seen a wall of developer notes like this about classes. This is some of the most insane changes I've ever seen. And the reason for this is because of their shift in mentality. They are completely shifting how they want classes to play. Like I read before, they want them to be less complex, less barrier to entry. They want them, so they're pruning defensives. They're pruning button bloat. They're obviously making healers easier to play. And if you read through these, they're also making tanks here to play, easier to play as well. I'm not going to read through all these, of course, but the last thing I wanted to touch on in this page is how they're increasing the interrupt duration for every single class by 2 seconds. So like DK's Mind Freeze only locked out a cast for 3 seconds. It's now 5. Solar Beam was 5 second science, now it's 7. Evoker was 4 second, now it's 6. We have Mage down here was 5, now it's 7. So in addition to like stuns and stops not making the mobs immune after 3, they're also increasing the kick durations and the interrupt durations, which means it's just going to be way easier to kick casters, stop casters. And so now I don't know if that means that they're going to put less casters in packs as well, or if they're just going to keep it the same and it's just going to be easier to kick and stop them. I wouldn't be surprised if this results into like the top end players pulling even more now because it's so easy to kick and stop them. Like you might actually want to have polls with forecasters, because you know that all of your kicks is going to lock them out for like 5 to 7 seconds. And then after that's done, you can just send like 5 stops in a row before there's really that bad of diminishing returns. Then after that, you can just send all your kicks again on the forecasters. So it will never surprise me the top end players doing degenerate stuff, but I think at least for new players, and like mid-level players, pugging is going to be much easier when it comes to stopping casts. So the last small change I want to talk about, which maybe it's not so small, is, yes, you've read it right, Valor stones are removed in Midnight. This is a long time coming, and it will affect Mythic Plus. You don't need Valor stones to upgrade things anymore. So you just need crests. So if for some reason you're short on Valor stones, that used to be very, very annoying. That's never going to be the case anymore. It's crests and crests only, and I think this is fine because there was really no need for Valor stones. They have so many currencies in the game. We did not need like 2 different currencies to upgrade gear. So that's an awesome little change. But anyway, those are the top 5 biggest changes in my opinion that will affect Mythic Plus. I'm a fan of it. I think if you're someone that also likes playing multiple classes and specs, it's going to be much easier to multi-class or multi-spec now, with the complexity being reduced and the button bloat being reduced. You're also going to need less keybinds, which is also a positive. So yeah, overall, I'm pretty happy for this. Very excited to see how the game plays in Midnight. And of course, I think we're going to see many more changes coming down the pipe. So thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one. Shout out to all the Patreon members. It's because of your support that I'm able to continue making Protection Warrior and World of Warcraft content. Thank you.